because of lack of diversity and because of the question of not listening to dissenting voices, I think is leading the European Union down a very treacherous path. So Europe at the moment faces what I call a multidimensional stress test when it comes to democracy. There are obviously threats to democracy from the far right, from far-right governments in many parts of Europe, but also from mainstream politicians who have unfortunately adopted and embraced and thereby amplified some of the very toxic narratives that are being broadcast and disseminated by the far right on the issue of migration, for instance, on the issue of disinformation, where if you have any dissenting views from the mainstream conversation, you are labeled a disseminator of fake news. There's also, of course, the whole question of protests against government. So there is a securitization going on, and there is self-censorship going on, and these things, all of these initiatives, all of these actions go against the democracy and human rights that Europe was very, very well known for across the world, and also when it comes to its own citizens. So, it's becoming a very complicated universe in Europe, not what we think and not what the European Union, I believe, set out to be. Take Pakistan, which has taken a very important stand in trying to be an intermediary, a peace negotiation intermediary between the US and Iran, for instance. So you have global South countries that are really taking initiatives, that have formed their own groups, their own bank, their own agencies. And these are not just temporary glitches in the global stage. This is really a massive transformation of how we look at the world and how the world looks at itself. So the European Union, if it sticks to its, I'm going to use the word, to its colonial approaches, still looks at the global South countries as subordinate and still has a superiority based on its colonial past, I think this is not going to work. And in fact, we see it's not working. It really is not working. I mean, the European Union's relationship with Africa, with many countries in Asia, including South Asia, is very transactional. There is very little respect for the European Union amongst citizens in the global South, once again, because of the charges and the allegations of double standards when it comes to Ukraine and Gaza and the application of international law. And so I think the European Union has a vested interest, a very important geopolitical interest in actually dealing with the global South countries in a more respectful, more humble way. And this, unfortunately, is a lesson that the EU is very reluctant to learn. It's not just a question of representation or tokenism or, just being nice to your ethnic minorities. It's a question of actually the relevance and credibility of the European Union in this very complicated 21st century, in a world of geopolitical tensions and challenges, where the EU's lack of diversity, I think, actually impacts on its policy making, leads to some very flawed decisions, including on issues that are really challenging Europe's human rights record, like Gaza, for instance, or the war in Iran, the US-Israeli war in Iran. These are very, very important issues that I think, because of lack of diversity and because of the question of not listening to dissenting voices, I think is leading the European Union down a very treacherous path when it comes to its global credibility. So representation is not just about having more black and brown faces, people around the table. It's actually listening to a variety, a diversity of opinions, which are coming from people who know some of the many, many problems that exist in the other parts of the world, who have intimate knowledge of these issues, and whose voices and whose ideas and visions and points of view would actually help the European Union in this very complex multipolar world. And not giving that voice and keeping it very Eurocentric and EU-centric in its approach to the rest of the world, I think undermines the European Union on the global stage.